The magazines scattered across Khloe Martinez's kitchen table like evidence of a crime she didn't remember committing. Her face stared back at her from glossy covers, captured in that split second when she'd helped a stranger breathe into a paper bag. Now the headlines screamed about secret marriages and billionaire romances, turning her 5-minute act of kindness into the love story of the century. Her phone buzzed for the 100th time that morning. Another text from her mother, another. Congratulations from a coworker who'd seen the news? Khloe pressed her palms against her temples, the familiar ache of a 12-hour ICU shift mixing with this new nightmare. The apartment intercom crackled to life like a gunshot. Khloe Martinez, you have exactly 10 seconds to explain why I'm seeing your face on every magazine cover as my secret fiancé. The voice exploded through her tiny apartment with the force of controlled fury. Khloe knocked over her coffee mug, the hot liquid spreading across her unicorn pajamas in a dark stain. She knew that voice. Deep, commanding, with just enough roughness to suggest the man behind it rarely had to ask for anything twice. Vitor Harrison, Chicago's real estate king, the man she'd helped breathe in an elevator last week. Oh, damn it. Khloe ran to the door, coffee still dripping from her clothes. Vitor, how did you get my address? And what story are you talking about? The pounding on her door shook the thin walls. Open this door right now. Khloe peered through the peephole and nearly laughed despite everything. There stood Vitor Harrison, disheveled hair sticking up at odd angles, wearing pink pajamas, covered in flamingos and hotel slippers. His face held the expression of someone about to commit murder, but the ridiculous outfit made him look more like an angry child than Chicago's most eligible bachelor. She opened the door slowly. Hi. Hi. Vitor waved a stack of magazines in. Her face, his dark eyes blazing. That's all you have to say after ruining my life? Khloe blinked, still processing the sight of him. I didn't do anything. Barely know you. I only saw you once in my life, in the elevator at my cousin's building last week, when you were having a panic attack and I gave you a paper bag. Exactly. Vitor shoved the magazines toward her. Secret billionaire marries nurse of the people. True love. Vitor Harrison finds his soulmate. Exclusive. The mysterious bride who conquered the most coveted bachelor. And there she was, on every cover, leaving the elevator with Vitor, clearly hyperventilating while she held a paper bag near his face. The photographer had caught them at the perfect angle, making it look intimate, romantic even. Her hand on his arm, his eyes focused on her face with what could easily be mistaken for adoration rather than oxygen deprivation. Oh my, Khloe murmured, flipping through the magazines. How did they... When did this happen? Yesterday morning I woke up with my mother, my 3 sisters, my Cuban grandmother, and my father bombing my phone, asking when they'd meet my secret. Wife Vitor started pacing in her tiny hallway, his hotel slippers making soft sounds against the worn carpet. My grandmother is already planning to make 15 types of Cuban sandwiches for Sunday dinner with her new daughter-in-law. Khloe couldn't help it. She laughed, as the sound bubbled up from somewhere deep in her chest, mixing exhaustion with the absurdity of the situation. Your grandmother sounds sweet. Sweet? Vitor stopped pacing and stared at her. She threatened. To disown me if I don't bring you to dinner by Sunday? His voice cracked slightly. And that's not all. My father said if I finally found a good woman, he'll give me the company sooner, so I can focus on family. Wait. Khloe raised her hands, coffee still staining her pajamas. You want the company sooner? Vitor's face turned red. Well, maybe. He always said he'd only pass the business when I matured and found someone who made me want to be a better man. And I've kind of been trying to prove that for 5 years. Khloe stared at him, pieces clicking together in her tired mind. You're telling me that a fake photo could solve all your problems and ruin mine? Because when the truth comes out, I'll look like the idiot who invented a fiancé. Vitor gestured dramatically, his flamingo pajamas making the movement almost comical. Khloe bit her lip, her mind racing. As an ICU nurse, she was used to making quick decisions in crisis situations. And this was definitely a crisis. Just not the medical kind she was trained for. How much time do you need? She asked suddenly. What? To prove to your father that you've matured? How much time? Vitor's eyes widened. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Khloe looked at the magazines again, at her own face staring back from covers she'd never imagined she'd be on. Look, I work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I have no social life. My last relationship was with a guy who cheated on me with my coworker. She gestured at the magazines. And apparently now I'm famous for helping a stranger not faint. In an elevator, she took a deep breath, the decision forming before she could second-guess herself. My mother also won't stop bugging me to find a good man and stop working so much. Maybe we could solve each other's problems. Vitor stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. You're proposing that we pretend to be married? Why not? Khloe shrugged, surprising herself with how calm she sounded. You get your company. I get my mother off my back. Everyone's happy. This is insane. Vitor opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then started laughing. First a chuckle, then a full belly laugh that echoed through the hallway. Good grief, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. He ran his hands through his already messy hair, and it'll probably go very wrong. Probably, Khloe agreed, smiling despite the chaos of her life. Vitor looked at her, then at the magazines, then back at her. But it could work too, right? It could. They stood there in the hallway, she in unicorn pajamas, dripping coffee, he in pink flamingo pajamas and hotel slippers, both holding magazines that had somehow turned them into Chicago's couple of the year. Vitor extended his hand. Partners in crime? Khloe shook his hand, feeling that strange electric sensation she'd noticed in the elevator. Something told her this was going to change everything in her life. Partners in crime. But I have some conditions. Like what? First, no megalomaniac contracts. Second, your family has to like me for real. I can't pretend to be someone else. She smiled mischievously. And third, you'll have to teach me how to be rich for a few weeks, because I have no idea how you millionaires behave. Vitor laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Deal. But I also have conditions. Shoot, you'll have to teach me how to be normal, because apparently I'm so disconnected from reality that I need panic attacks to meet nice people. Khloe extended her hand again. Deal, partner. And so began the most complicated, hilarious, and unexpectedly romantic lie in Chicago's history. Little did they know that the Harrison family took the tradition of meeting the daughter-in-law very seriously. Very seriously indeed. 3 hours later, Khloe found herself standing in front of a mirror-covered penthouse elevator. Wearing a $3,000 dress she couldn't even pronounce the designer's name of, holding Vitor's sweaty hand. Okay, quick recap, Vitor whispered frantically as the elevator climbed to the 47th floor. My mom's name is Carmen. She's a retired dance teacher who still thinks she can fix everyone's posture. My dad is Roberto. He built this empire from a food truck and never lets anyone forget it. My sisters are Isabella, Sophia, and Anna. Wait, Khloe interrupted, panic rising in her throat. You said no Isabella or Sophia names in our story? Those are your actual sisters. Vitor looked stricken. I can't change their real names. This is already getting complicated, Khloe muttered, then looked down at her outfit. And why did your personal shopper buy me a dress that costs more than my monthly rent? It's because my family will notice if you show up in... Vitor gestured vaguely at her usual style. My scrubs are very professional. Thank you very much. The elevator dinged and the doors opened to reveal absolute chaos. Mijo, where is she? Where is my new daughter? A whirlwind of a woman with perfectly styled gray hair and the energy of a tornado came barreling toward them. This had to be Carmen Harrison, and she was magnificent in the most terrifying way possible. Mom, this is... Tora started, but Carmen had already engulfed Khloe in a hug so tight she could barely breathe, spinning her around like they'd known each other for decades. Khloe, my beautiful daughter, look at you. Carmen held her at arm's length, examining her like a prized gemstone. Vitor told us nothing about you. Nothing. Can you believe this boy married in secret and doesn't tell his mother? Actually, we're not, Khloe began. Engaged. Vitor shouted quickly. We're engaged, not married yet. Long engagement. Very, very long. Carmen's eyes lit up like the 4th of July. Even better. You get to plan a wedding, Roberto. Roberto, come meet your future daughter-in-law.
Us.
From somewhere in the massive living room came a booming voice. I'm making Cuban coffee. Nobody moves until everyone has coffee. Right, Thor whispered. He believes Cuban coffee solves all the world's problems. Does it? Khloe whispered back. Honestly, sometimes it does. Before Khloe could respond, 3 women appeared from different directions, moving like a coordinated attack squad. The famous Khloe. The first one, a tall brunette with Vitor's same brown eyes, extended her hand. I'm Isabella, the eldest and wisest sister. I'm Sophia, said the second, a shorter blonde with a mischievous grin, the middle child and family troublemaker. And I'm Anna, the youngest, probably mid-20s, bounced forward. It's the baby who knows all of Vitor's embarrassing secrets. Please don't, Vitor groaned. Oh, we absolutely will, Sophia grinned wickedly. Before anyone could elaborate, Vitor Harrison emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of tiny cups filled with what looked like liquid energy. He was a bear of a man with kind eyes and hands that looked like they'd built half of Chicago brick by brick. Khloe. He set down the tray and pulled her into a gentle but firm hug. Welcome to our crazy family. I hope you're ready for chaos, because once you're a Harrison, there's no going back. The sincerity in his voice made Khloe's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. When was the last time someone had welcomed her anywhere with such genuine warmth? Now Roberto continued, handing her a small cup. Tell us how you met our disaster. Of a son, all eyes turned to Khloe. Vitor looked like he was about to faint again. Well, Khloe started, looking at the tiny cup of coffee that smelled strong enough to wake the dead. It was actually pretty dramatic. Dramatic? Carmen clapped her hands. I love dramatic. I was visiting my cousin who lives in Vitor's building, and I was waiting for the elevator when the doors opened and there was this... She glanced at Vitor, who was turning 3 shades of red. This incredibly handsome man who was clearly having a panic attack. Ah, Anna cooed. So I did what any nurse would do. I helped him, gave him a paper bag to breathe into, made sure he was okay. We talked for maybe 5 minutes and then... Khloe shrugged. I guess when you know, you know. The family erupted. When you know, you know. Carmen practically shouted. Roberto, did you hear that? It's just like us, 43 years ago. Roberto nodded sagely. I saw your mother dancing salsa at a street festival, and I knew immediately I was going to marry that woman. You couldn't even salsa. Carmen laughed. I learned for love. A man learns salsa for love. Isabella raised an eyebrow. But how did you go from a 5-minute elevator conversation to secretly engaged? Vitor opened his mouth, clearly about to panic again, but Khloe jumped in smoothly. Have you ever met your brother? He's intense. 3 days later, he showed up at my apartment with flowers and this whole speech about how he couldn't stop thinking about me. She looked at Vitor with what she hoped looked like adoration. How could I say no to that? What kind of flowers? Sophia asked suspiciously. Khloe's mind went blank. What flowers would Vitor bring? Sunflowers, Vitor said suddenly. Ridiculous sunflowers? Because she mentioned she loves how they always turn toward the light. And I thought she was like that. Always looking for the bright side. The sincerity in his voice surprised everyone, including Khloe. For a moment, it didn't feel like acting. Oh, my heart, Anna whispered, pressing her hands to her chest. And the secret engagement? Isabella pressed. She was clearly the family. Detective, my idea, Khloe said quickly. I wanted to focus on my nursing career first. Make sure I could balance everything. Vitor was patient enough to wait for me to be ready. Roberto nodded approvingly. Smart woman. Career first, then family. I respect that. Carmen, however, was practically vibrating with excitement. But now you're ready, which means wedding planning. When? Where? What's your vision? Do you like roses or orchids? Traditional or modern? Big celebration or intimate family? Vitor warned. Don't mom me. I've been waiting 32 years to plan your wedding, Khloe said. I was hoping you could help me with that. I don't really know much about fancy weddings. My family's more of the potluck in the community center type. Carmen looked like she might actually faint from joy. Roberto, did you hear that? She wants my help. Get to plan a wedding. The whole neighborhood heard you. Mi amor? Roberto chuckled. And that's when Khloe realized what she'd gotten herself into. This wasn't just pretending to be engaged to Vitor. She'd just signed up to be adopted by the most loving, chaotic, overwhelming family in Chicago. As Carmen began rattling off wedding venue ideas at lightning speed, Sophia sidled up too. Khloe, you know, she whispered, I've never seen my brother look at anyone the way he's looking at you right now. Khloe glanced over at Vitor, who was listening to his father explain something with animated hand gestures. But his eyes kept drifting back to her with an expression she couldn't quite read. We're just good at acting, Khloe whispered back. Sophia's grin turned absolutely wicked. Sure you are. And suddenly, Khloe had the sinking feeling that fooling the Harrison family was going to be much harder than she'd thought, especially when she wasn't entirely sure she was still acting. You want me to what? Khloe stared at Vitor in disbelief as they stood in his ridiculously massive penthouse apartment the next morning. She'd spent the night in the guest room, which was bigger than her entire apartment, and woken up to him, frantically pacing around with coffee and what appeared to be a battle plan. Move in with me, temporarily, Vitor added quickly, seeing her expression. My family is intense. They're going to want to see us together constantly now. Isabella already texted me 6 times asking when she can take you shopping for proper engagement party outfits? Engagement party? Khloe nearly choked on her coffee. Mom's planning it for next Saturday. She's invited half of Chicago. Vitor ran his hands through his hair. I tried to tell her it was too soon, but she said, and I quote, Mijo, I've been waiting 32 years for this party. It's happening whether you like it or not. Khloe set down her mug and looked around the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. The kitchen was bigger than most restaurants, and she was pretty sure the bathroom had more square footage than her bedroom. Vitor, I work at a hospital. I smell like disinfectant and sadness most days. I don't know how to live in, she gestured around. This museum. That's exactly why you need to move in. You need to learn how to be comfortable here before the party. I need to, he paused, looking embarrassed. You need to what? I need to learn how to be normal, he admitted. Yesterday, when your cousin called to check on you and you were just talking to her like a regular person, laughing about some patient who tried to flirt with you, I realized I haven't had a normal conversation with anyone in years. Something in his voice made Khloe look at him more closely. Behind all the expensive clothes and confident posture, Vitor Harrison looked lonely. Okay, she said finally, but I have conditions. More conditions. First, I keep working my shifts at the hospital, not playing house 24/7. Second, you don't try to change how I am. Your family liked me yesterday because I was myself. And third, she grinned mischievously. You're coming to the hospital with me today? I'm sorry, what? You want to learn normal? Nothing's more normal than my Tuesday shift in the ICU. Plus, if we're supposedly madly in love, you should know what I actually do for a living. Vitor paled. Hospitals have sick people. Very astute observation, billionaire boy. And needles sometimes. And bodily fluids. Khloe laughed. Are you seriously afraid of a hospital? Not afraid, Vitor protested. I'm just medically cautious. You're afraid? Fine, I'm terrified. Happy 2 hours later, Khloe was practically dragging a green-faced Vitor through the doors of Chicago General Hospital. She'd managed to get him into jeans and a plain t-shirt, though he still somehow looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Khloe. Her colleague Marcus, a tall nurse with intricate tattoos covering his arms, waved from the nurse's station. You brought a visitor. Please tell me this is the mysterious boyfriend we've heard absolutely nothing about. Marcus, meet. Vitor? Vitor Marcus is my favorite coworker, and the person who keeps me sane during the crazy shifts. Vitor shook Marcus's hand, looking slightly less green. Nice to meet you. Ooh, fancy accent. Where are you from? Here, actually. Born in Chicago? Marcus raised an eyebrow at Khloe. Interesting. So what do you do? I'm in real estate. Real estate. Marcus's eyes lit up. My boyfriend and I are looking for a place in Lincoln Park. Know any good deals? Vitor opened his mouth, probably to mention he owned half the buildings in Lincoln Park, but Khloe jumped in quickly. More of a luxury market specialist, but I bet he could give you some good tips. Actually, Vitor said, surprising everyone if you're looking in Lincoln Park. Avoid anything built before 1995 on the east side. Foundation issues from the old development company, and check the parking situation carefully. Street parking is about to get restricted. Marcus blinked. That's actually really helpful. Thanks. As they walked away, Khloe whispered, "Good save with the real estate advice." "I wasn't lying. I do know real estate." Vitor smiled slightly. "Just maybe more than Marcus needs to know." They spent the morning with Khloe showing Vitor around the ICU. To her surprise, once he got over his initial queasiness, he was genuinely interested in what she did. He asked thoughtful questions about her patients, listened when she explained procedures, and even helped her organize supply closets without complaining about the mundane work. "You're really good at this," he said during their lunch break. Watching her review patient charts with the focused intensity of someone who held lives in her hands, "It's just my job." "No, it's not." Vitor's voice was serious. "I've seen people do jobs. This is different. You care about every single person. In there, like their family." Khloe looked up from her charts, struck by the sincerity in his expression. "They kind of are family in a way. When someone's fighting for their life, you become part of their story, even if it's just for a few hours or days." "Is that why you helped me in the elevator? The family thing? Maybe?" Khloe met his eyes. "Or maybe I just can't stand seeing someone in pain when I can do something about it." Something shifted between them in that moment, something deeper than their fake engagement arrangement. Vitor reached across the small table and touched her hand gently. "I'm starting to understand why my family fell in love with you so quickly." Before Khloe could respond, her pager bezipped urgently. She was on her feet instantly, the moment broken. "I have to go, code blue." Vitor watched her run toward the emergency, her entire being transformed into focused medical precision. And for the first time, since this whole charade began, he wondered if pretending to be in love with Khloe Martinez might be the most dangerous thing he'd ever done. Because somewhere between watching her save lives and seeing her laugh with his family, pretending was starting to feel dangerously real. That evening, as they sat in his penthouse sharing takeout Chinese food, Vitor made a decision that would change everything. "Khloe, there's something I need to tell you about the engagement party." She looked up from her lo mein, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What about it? My father invited someone I haven't seen in 3 years?" Vitor's jaw tightened. "My ex-fiancée, Alina? She's back in Chicago, and she's coming to our party." The chopsticks fell from Khloe's hands. "Your ex-fiancée? The one you didn't mention when we made this deal? It wasn't relevant then. It's relevant now." Khloe stood up, pacing around his massive living room. "What happened between you two?" Vitor was quiet for a long moment. "She left me 3 days before our wedding. Said I was too focused on business, too emotionally unavailable. Said she couldn't marry someone who treated love like a merger. And now she's back." "And now she's back," he confirmed. "Probably to see if the stories about me finding someone who changed me are true." Khloe stopped pacing and looked at him. "Is that what this is really about? Proving something to your ex?" "No." Vitor stood up, his voice fierce. "This started as a way to get my father's company. But Khloe, watching you with my family today, seeing you at the hospital, he ran his hands through his hair. I don't know what this is anymore." The air between them crackled with tension. Khloe felt her carefully constructed walls starting to crumble. "Vitor, we can't. This is fake. We agreed." "Did we?" He stepped closer. "Because what I felt when you held my hand today didn't feel fake. When you laughed at my father's terrible jokes. When you let my mother hug you like you belonged there. When you looked at me like I was someone worth saving, none of that felt fake." Khloe's heart hammered against her ribs. "We're going to ruin this. We're going to ruin the arrangement." "Maybe the arrangement was ruined the moment we shook hands," Vitor said quietly. "Maybe we've been lying to ourselves more than anyone else." Before either of them could say another word, Khloe's phone rang. The hospital emergency. "I have to take this," she whispered, but her eyes never left his face. As she answered the call, Vitor realized that in 5 days, at their engagement party, in front of his family, his ex-fiancée, and half of Chicago's elite. He was going to have to decide once and for all what was real and what was pretend. And he was terrified he already knew the answer. The engagement party was everything Carmen Harrison had promised and more. The ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and flowers that probably cost more than Khloe's annual salary. Chicago's elite mingled in designer gowns and perfectly tailored suits, their conversations a carefully orchestrated symphony of wealth and influence. Khloe stood at the edge of the crowd, wearing a midnight blue dress that Isabella had insisted was absolutely perfect in feeling, like she was wearing a costume. Despite living in Vitor's penthouse for the past week, despite growing closer to his family, despite the increasingly blurred lines between pretense and reality, she still felt like an imposter in this glittering world. "You look beautiful," Vitor appeared beside her, devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo. But there was tension in his shoulders, and his eyes kept scanning the crowd. "Looking for someone?" Khloe asked, though she already knew the answer. "Elena's here. She arrived 20 minutes ago." Khloe followed his gaze across the room and found her immediately. Elena Rodriguez was everything Khloe wasn't. Tall, elegant, the kind of effortless beauty that came from good genes and expensive maintenance. She wore a white dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, and she moved through the crowd like she owned it. "She's beautiful," Khloe said quietly. "She is." Vitor's honesty stung, but then he turned to face her fully. "But she's not you." Before Khloe could process what that meant, Carmen Harrison's voice rang out over the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight to celebrate my son Vitor and his beautiful fiancée, Khloe." Da-da-da-da, the crowd applauded, and Khloe felt hundreds of eyes turned toward them. Vitor took her hand, his palm warm and slightly damp with nerves. "We should," he started. "Dance. We should dance," Khloe finished. They moved to the center of the dance floor as the band began playing something slow and romantic. Vitor's arms came around her waist, and she placed her hands on his shoulders, trying to ignore how perfectly they fit together. "Remember what we practiced?" Vitor murmured against her ear. They'd spent the past 3 evenings learning to dance together in his living room. Initially awkward and stumbling, but gradually finding their rhythm. Now, surrounded by watching eyes and glittering lights, their movements were fluid, natural, like they'd been dancing together for years. "You're a better actor than I gave you credit for," Khloe whispered. "Am I acting?" Vitor's voice was barely audible over the music. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the ballroom faded away. There was only the warmth of his hands on her waist, the familiar scent of his cologne. The way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room. Then the song ended, and reality crashed back in. "Vitor?" They broke apart to find Elena standing beside them, her smile perfectly polished and completely cold. Elena, Vitor's voice was carefully neutral. "I didn't expect you to come. Your father personally invited me. He said he wanted me to meet the woman who finally captured your heart." Elena's gaze shifted to Khloe, assessing. "So you must be the famous Khloe? The nurse?" The way she said nurse made it sound like an insult. "That's right," Khloe said, lifting her chin. "And you must be Elena, the ex-fiancée." Elena's perfect smile faltered for just a moment, guilty as charged. "Though I prefer to think of myself as the one who got away?" She looked between them with calculating eyes. "Though I have to say, this is all very sudden, isn't it? It's a whirlwind romance, secret engagement. Very unlike the Vitor I knew." "Vitor. People change," Vitor said firmly.
"Do they?"
Elena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Because the Vitor I knew was incapable of putting anyone before his business. He was emotionally unavailable, more concerned with closing deals than opening his heart. Has that really changed, or is this just another transaction?" Khloe felt like she'd been slapped, because Elena's words hit too close to the truth. Had started as a transaction, a mutual benefit arrangement. Even if her feelings had evolved, even if she thought Vitor's had to, how could she be sure? "If you'll excuse us," Vitor's voice was ice cold. "I'd like to dance with my fiancé." But as he led Khloe away, Elena's words followed them like poison. "Just remember, darling, Elena called softly. I know him better than anyone. And I know what happens when the novelty wears off. They danced to more songs in silence. But the magic was broken. Khloe could feel Vitor's tension, could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. When the music stopped, she couldn't take it anymore. I need some air. She slipped away from the crowd, finding refuge on a small balcony overlooking the Chicago River. The night air was cool against her heated skin, and she gripped the railing, trying to sort through the chaos in her mind. She's right, you know. Khloe spun around to find Elena standing in the doorway, having followed her outside. About what? About this being a transaction. Elena stepped onto the balcony, her heels clicking against the stone. I've been watching you two all night.
You're good.
I'll give you that. But I know Vitor. I know his tells, his habits, the way he retreats into business mode when things get too real. You don't know anything about us, don't I? Elena moved closer. How long have you really known him? A few weeks? And how did this start? Some meet-cute story about helping him breathe in an elevator? She laughed softly. Very convenient, very public. It's very useful for a man who needs to prove to his father that he's capable of love. Khloe's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that Vitor Harrison doesn't do anything without calculating the benefits. He's incapable of genuine, spontaneous emotion. This whole thing, this engagement, it's all carefully orchestrated to get what he wants. His father's company. You're wrong. Then why haven't you set a wedding date? Is this engagement mysteriously long-term? Face it, honey, you're a means to an end. And when he gets what he wants, when his father hands over the company, what do you think happens to you? Lana's words were like knives, each one finding its mark because they echoed Khloe's own deepest fears. She thought about how this had started, about Vitor's immediate agreement to her conditions, about the way he'd been so quick to solve his family problem with a fake relationship. I can see I've given you something to think about, Elena said with satisfaction. Just remember, when this all falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Khloe. That dress is lovely, but you might want to be careful. Blue is always my color. Alone on the balcony, Khloe felt her carefully constructed world crumbling. Every moment with Vitor suddenly felt suspect. Had his gentleness at the hospital been calculated? Had his vulnerability about learning to be normal been an act? Even their almost kiss in his penthouse could have been manipulation, a way to make their charade more convincing. She was so lost in her spiral of doubt that she didn't hear footsteps behind her. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Vitor's voice made her jump. She turned to find him silhouetted in the doorway, his bow tie undone and hanging loose around his neck. The party's inside, she said, her voice shakier than she intended. The party doesn't matter. He stepped onto the balcony, concern etched in his features. What's wrong? You disappeared, and when I asked Isabella if she'd seen you, she said, Elena went looking for you. What did she say? Khloe studied his face in the moonlight. Was the worry genuine, or was he concerned that his carefully laid plans were unraveling? She told me the truth, Khloe said quietly. What truth? That this is all a transaction to you. That I'm just a means to get your father's company, and when you have what you want, I'll be discarded like yesterday's news. Vitor's face went through several emotions. Shock, anger, and something that looked almost like pain. You believe her? Should I? Khloe's voice broke slightly. Because when I really think about it, everything she said makes sense. This whole thing started because you needed to prove to your father that you'd matured. I'm the perfect solution. A nurse. A good person. Someone who makes you look caring and grounded. But what happens when the novelty wears off, Vitor? What? Happens when you have your company and don't need me anymore? You want to know what happens? Vitor's voice was rough with emotion. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the hurt in his eyes. You want to know the truth about what? Elena said. Khloe nodded, bracing herself. She's right about one thing. This did start as a transaction. When I saw those magazine covers, when I realized this fake relationship could solve my problems, I jumped at it. I calculated the benefits, Wade. The risks, approached it like a business deal. Each word felt like a physical blow. Khloe wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. But she's wrong about everything else, Vitor continued fiercely. She's wrong about when it stopped being a transaction. She's wrong about what you mean to me. And she's wrong about what happens next. He reached for her hands, and despite everything, Khloe let him take them. The transaction ended the moment you walked into my family's home and made my mother cry happy tears. It ended when you held my hand during your shift and made me feel like I belonged somewhere other than a boardroom. It ended when I realized that proving something to my father mattered less than proving something to myself. What? Khloe whispered. That I'm capable of loving someone more than I love success. That I'm capable of putting someone else's happiness before my own ambition. His grip on her hands tightened. Alina left me because she said I was emotionally unavailable. She was right. But you make me want to be available. You make me want to be vulnerable. You make me want to be worthy of the way you look at me. Tears pricked at Khloe's eyes. How do I know this isn't just another calculated move? Because, Vitor said, his voice breaking slightly. If this was calculated, I would have chosen someone who fit into my world perfectly. Someone like Alina, who knows how to navigate high society and looks perfect on my arm at business dinners. I wouldn't have chosen someone who challenges me to be better, who makes me question everything I thought I wanted, who scares the hell out of me because I've never needed anyone the way I need you. He released her hands and stepped back, running, his fingers through his hair. But maybe Elena's right about one thing. Maybe you deserve better than someone who's still learning how to love properly. Maybe you deserve someone who knew from the first moment that you were everything, not someone who had to figure it out along the way. The pain in his voice shattered the last of Khloe's defenses. She saw him clearly then, not as the calculating businessman Alina had painted him as, but as a man who had spent so long protecting his heart that he barely knew how to open it. Vitor, she said softly. He looked up, hope and fear warring in his expression. The first moment I saw you having a panic attack in that elevator, do you know what I thought? He shook his head. I thought, here's someone who needs help, and I can help him, that's it. No calculations, no weighing of benefits, just instinct. She stepped closer. When you showed up at my apartment with those magazines, when you proposed this crazy fake engagement, do you know why I said yes? Because you needed your mother off your back. Khloe smiled through her tears. Because I looked at you standing there in those ridiculous flamingo pajamas, and I thought, here's someone who needs help again. And I wanted to help you again, even though it was insane, especially because it was insane. She reached up and touched his face gently. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about helping you and started being about loving you. That terrifies me more than any of Elena's warnings. Vitor's eyes widened. You love me? I love the way you learned to make Cuban coffee because you wanted to impress my family. I love how you reorganized supply closets without complaining because it meant spending time with me. I love that you're brave enough to face your fears, even if one of those fears is a hospital. She smiled. And I love that you're learning to put your heart before your head even when it's scary. Khloe, her name was a prayer on his lips. So, here's what's going to happen, she said, her voice gaining strength. We're going to go back to that party, going to dance. And we're going to stop pretending that this is fake, because it stopped being fake a long time ago. And Alina can watch us be happy and remember what she gave up. Vitor's smile was radiant. I love you too, by the way, in case that wasn't clear. It's getting clearer, Khloe laughed. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathless, the sounds of the party drifted out from inside. Ready to face Chicago's elite as a real couple? Vitor asked. With you? I'm ready for anything. Hand in hand, they walked back toward the light and music, leaving the shadows and doubts behind them. But as they reached the doorway, Khloe couldn't shake the feeling that their real test was still coming, because learning to love each other was only the beginning. Now they had to learn to build a life together, bridging the gap between his world of wealth and privilege and her world of service and sacrifice. And that, Khloe suspected, would be the greatest challenge of all. 6 months later, Khloe Martinez Harrison, she'd hyphenated her name. much to Carmen's delight, stood in the break room of Chicago General Hospital, staring at the letter in her hands with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Nightingale Foundation wants to fund your community health initiative? Marcus read over her shoulder. Full funding for mobile health clinics in underserved neighborhoods? Holy shit, Khloe, this is huge. Language, Marcus? Khloe laughed, but her heart was racing. The proposal she'd submitted 3 months ago had been a long shot. A dream she'd harbored since nursing school about bringing healthcare directly to people who couldn't access it otherwise. Does Vitor know? Not yet. He's in meetings all day, trying to finalize the Harrison Foundation's partnership with the city for affordable housing. Khloe folded the letter carefully. We're both too busy changing the world to see each other before dinner. It was true. The months since their engagement party had been a whirlwind of balancing their respective careers while learning to build a life together. Vitor had indeed received his father's company, but not in the way anyone expected. Roberto Harrison, moved by watching his son's genuine transformation and impressed by Khloe's influence on the family's charitable giving, had surprised everyone by restructuring the business entirely. Instead of simply handing over Harrison real estate, he'd created the Harrison Foundation, dedicated to affordable housing and community development, with Vitor as its director. I spent 40 years building wealth, Roberto had announced at a family dinner. Now I want to spend the next 40 years building communities. The transition hadn't been easy. Vitor had struggled with moving away from profit-driven development to mission-driven work. There had been late nights of doubt, moments when he questioned whether he was making the right choice, arguments about money and purpose and what success really meant. But watching him now, seeing how he lit up when talking about a new community center or a partnership with local schools, Khloe knew he'd found his calling. Her phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Family dinner Sunday. Mom's making enough food for a small army? Bring your appetite and prepare for wedding planning talk. She found a new magazine. Khloe smiled. The wedding planning had become Carmen's full-time obsession, a guest list that seemed to grow daily and venue discussions that could last for hours. They'd finally settled on a garden ceremony at the Harrison family estate in the spring. But Carmen continued to find inspiration in bridal magazines and Pinterest boards. Dr. Martinez Harrison to Trauma Bay 3. Dr. Martinez Harrison 2. Trauma Bay 3. The announcement over the hospital's PA system made Khloe laugh every time. She'd started using her hyphenated name professionally, partly because she was proud of her marriage, but mostly because it amused her to see people's reactions when they realized she was married to that Harrison. She grabbed her stethoscope and headed toward trauma, but stopped short when she saw the patient being wheeled in. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, unconscious and pale. The paramedic rattling off vitals, while the girl's mother ran alongside the gurney, tears streaming down her face. She just collapsed at school, the mother was saying. She said her chest hurt and then she just fell down. She going to be okay? Please tell me she's going to be okay. Khloe's training kicked in, but her heart clenched as she looked at the scared mother. She'd been in this situation hundreds of times, but it never got easier. We're going to take excellent care of her, Khloe said firmly, taking the mother's hand. I'm Khloe, and I'm going to be her nurse. What's her name? Sophia. Her name is Sophia. For the next 3 hours, Khloe worked alongside the medical team to stabilize Sophia. Had gone into cardiac arrest due to an undiagnosed heart condition. It was touch and go for a while. It's a kind of situation that reminded Khloe why she'd become a nurse in the first place. When Sophia's condition finally stabilized and she was moved to the pediatric ICU, Khloe found the mother in the family waiting room, staring out the window with exhausted eyes. She's stable, Khloe said softly, sitting beside her. The surgery went well. She's going to need ongoing treatment, but the prognosis is good. The woman broke down then, months of worry and fear pouring out as Khloe held her, offering comfort and tissues. She thought about the letter in her locker, about mobile health clinics and early intervention programs that could catch conditions like Sophia's before they became life-threatening emergencies. Reyes, Khloe said gently, do you have insurance? Are you going to be able to manage the follow-up care Sophia needs? The woman's face crumpled. I don't know. I work 3 jobs, but none of them offer good insurance. I've been trying to get her to a cardiologist for months, but the wait lists are so long and the costs. Khloe made a decision that would have surprised her 6 months ago but felt completely natural now. Let me make a phone call. Out. An hour later, Vitor walked into the hospital, still wearing his suit from board meetings, carrying coffee, and the expression he got when he was about to move mountains. "Tell me about Sophia," said without preamble. Khloe explained the situation as they walked toward the pediatric. "I see you." She watched Vitor's face as she described Mrs. Reyes' struggles with insurance and access to care. Saw the moment when his businessman's mind started calculating solutions. "The Harrison Foundation has been looking for a pilot program for pediatric cardiac care," he said thoughtfully. "What if we partnered with the hospital to create a fund for uninsured families? Cover not just treatment, but prevention, screening, education." "You'd do that?" "Khloe, 6 months ago, I would have written a check and felt good about myself. Now, I want to build something that changes the system." He squeezed her hand. "Besides, my wife is about to launch mobile health clinics. Seems like we should coordinate our world-changing efforts." "You heard about the funding?" Marcus texted me. He's very excited and uses a lot of capital letters in his messages. Vitor grinned. "I'm proud of you. And I have an idea about that too." He pulled out his phone and showed her an email. "The city approved our proposal for the community development project on the south side. 50 units of affordable housing, community center," and he scrolled down. "Space allocated for a permanent health clinic?" Khloe stared at the screen, then at her husband. "You planned this, hoped for this. There's a difference." His expression grew serious. "Khloe, what we're building together, it's bigger than either of us could do alone. Your clinical expertise, my resources and connections, your understanding of community needs, my ability to navigate city bureaucracy. We're good together, in work and in life, especially in life." They were interrupted by Mrs. Reyes, who had come looking for Khloe with tears in her eyes. "Nurse Khloe, they said you arranged for someone to help with Sophia's treatment?" "I don't understand. Who would do that for strangers?" Khloe looked at Vitor, then back at Mrs. Reyes. "Sometimes people help because they can. Sometimes they help because they remember what it feels like to need help. And sometimes they help because they've learned that taking care of each other is what makes us human." Later that evening, as they sat in their penthouse overlooking the city, Khloe curled up against Vitor's side on the couch, both of them exhausted but happy. "I have something for you," Vitor said, reaching for an envelope on the coffee table. "This is another wedding venue option. I'm hiding all of your mother's bridal magazines. Open it." Inside was a deed. Khloe read it twice before she understood what she was looking at. "You bought my old apartment building?" "Bought it, renovated it, and turned it into affordable housing for hospital staff and community workers. The penthouse is still available if you ever get tired of living in this museum." Khloe stared at the document, then at her husband. "Why?" "Because you called this place a museum, and I realized you were right. It's beautiful, but it's not really home. Home is wherever we are together, whether that's here or there or in some tent in the middle of nowhere, if that's what would make you happy. You're keeping the penthouse, though, for now. But I'm thinking we might want something different eventually. Something with a backyard for the kids we'll have someday. Something in a neighborhood where we can walk to the corner store and know our neighbors' names." Khloe sat up and looked at him seriously. "You want kids and a house with a backyard and neighbors? I want a life with you. Whatever that looks like." Vitor touched her face gently. Lena was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right. "About one, I did choose business over love for a long time. But she was wrong about why. It wasn't because I was incapable of love. It was because I'd never met anyone worth changing for. And now I know the difference between changing for someone and changing because of someone. You didn't ask me to become a different person. You just made me want to become a better version of myself." Khloe kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of the promise of all their tomorrows. "I love you, Vitor Harrison. I love you too, Khloe Martinez Harrison. Even when I track hospital germs through your pristine penthouse. Especially then." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city. Lights twinkle below them, somewhere out there. Sophia was recovering with her family by her side. Somewhere out there, Mrs. Reyes was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. Somewhere out there, construction crews were breaking ground on affordable housing that would give families a chance at stability and hope. And here, in this moment, Khloe realized that fairy tales didn't always look like she'd expected. Sometimes they looked like fake engagements that became real love. Sometimes they looked like billionaires learning to be human and nurses learning to dream bigger. Sometimes they looked like two people deciding that together they could change not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Vitor? When we tell our kids this story someday, should we mention the flamingo pajamas? His laughter echoed through the penthouse, mixing with hers, creating the soundtrack of their happily ever after. Asterisk the end. Asterisk asterisk like this video. If the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.